Hello and welcome to Reopening Hamilton County Schools, a video program where we try to share information about how we're going to reopen schools, what it may look like, and choices for parents. Coming up in this program, we'll talk about phases that we could be in as we move toward opening for the school year on August 12th. Joining us are Keith Fogelman. He is the Chief Talent Officer for Hamilton County Schools, and also the man who is in charge of everything Junior ROTC, a great program throughout the county involving a lot of our students. That's Lieutenant Colonel retired Bill Brooks. I know it's been a quick, busy few weeks of putting this plan together, but wanted to bring you in today to help us understand what the phases are, how you develop them, and what parents can expect as we go through this process looking to open schools. So I think Lieutenant Colonel Brooks, you're going to start us off by talking about how you guys develop these phases and work through that process.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. Yes, I'd like to start off primarily, we have 4 phases, of course, but it just didn't happen. I think the foundation is, how did we even develop phases? The first thing we did was we started out with some guiding principles. We had 4 guiding principles that led us to pretty much everything that we've done as we prepare to reopen the schools. And our first guiding principle as we were developing phases were to recognize and minimizing the risks to our public. We were very conscientious and concerned about focusing on our students, our teachers, and employees, and make sure that whatever phases that we used or whatever we developed, that it was done in a health conscious and a safe manner. Secondly, our guiding principle, we realized that getting back in school and developing phases to get back into school, that we had to understand and address the impact of student learning. And in addition to student learning, also their well-being in terms of how it affects the student's social emotional state as well. So that was a factor. And thirdly, our guiding principle was recognizing as we transitioned when COVID-19 hit and we went to, when our students left school, we realized not that we didn't already know it, but it really highlighted the importance of school to the community. So we kept that at the forefront as well. And then lastly, we realized that as we looking at setting phases for reopening schools, that we had to acknowledge the operational and the logistical aspect of it as well, to see that whatever we wanted to do, if it would be supportable from an operational and a logistical standpoint. So I wanted to just set the stage of how we came up with the 4 phases to start school. And Keith is going to cover the phases.
Thank you, Colonel Brooks. We, as he said, we used our guiding principles to develop the phases, but one of the things we also did, we looked at a lot of different studies, looked at what other school districts were doing, as well as looking at what business was doing as they were recovering. Of course, we used the information from the state, from the federal government, but really tried to take a broad brush look at what's happening before we got into really settling into what phases. We've got 4 phases, and the phase 1 is that all of our schools are closed. We're in that situation. We've got the spread of COVID-19 is significant in our community, and at that point, we have transitioned completely to remote learning. We're in a mode of taking care of our students, and also from not only the academic standpoint, but also looking out for students' well-being. As we did in the latter part of last school year, we'll be activating our food service program. So there will be a lot of ways that we'll be supporting students as we move into this phase. Our phase 2, we would see the spread as moderate, but increasing. And in this phase, we'll be in a reduced on-campus state. We'll be in school 2 days a week for face-to-face instruction for each student. So we would see this as students broken into an A and a B group. A group is in school for 2 days a week. B group is in school two days a week. And then we'll use the third day, typically a Wednesday, to continue remote learning with those groups. And we'll also use that day to do some more intense disinfecting as we clean and disinfect between the two groups. Phase 3, this is when the spread is minimal in the community. At this point, our schools are open, but we're also preparing for the potential of short-term closures during this time. We may have schools that will have a positive test, and we recognize that what we'll need to do in those situations would be to close the building anywhere from 48 to 72 hours, go in, disinfect, and really be in a position to prepare to reopen that school in a health, and with a focus on health and safety. And then phase 4 is really pretty straightforward. All schools are open. That's where we want to be, but we'll also let the situation with COVID-19 really help us determine each of these phases. Even when we're in phase 4 and we are open, we're in a situation to where we're constantly monitoring the community and identifying any types of issues going on with COVID-19 spread so that we're prepared to react, really staying in a state of readiness as we're preparing. Also, some of the question has been, how would we transition between these phases? And one of the things that we felt like was really important as we begin this process is a way that we could signal the community, signal our parents, our students, our staff about where we may potentially be as it relates to COVID-19 in our community. So what we worked with our healthcare professionals on the task force team. Again, we went and looked at what other school districts were doing, and we've developed this gating criteria that we think will be help us to be able to not only communicate effectively about what phase we're in or which phase we may be moving into, but also be able to help us with a solid decision-making process. In other words, maybe a risk-based decision-making process. Our phases, we will base those on the number of active cases that are in Hamilton County. You can go to the Hamilton County Health Department website. On a daily basis, they have that number of active cases listed. We'll use that information to help us make decisions. As you can see here on this graphic, that we would be in phase 3 if we had approximately 400 cases up to 1,500 cases. Now, as we approach that 1,500 case mark, we've got a transition period built in there. And the reason that transition period is built in there, some of the other pieces of information that we'll be factoring into our decision-making process is the average number of daily cases, positive cases in Hamilton County, the daily number of hospitalizations, number of patients in ICU. Once we're in school, we'll be factoring in teacher absences, student absences. So these are some, especially teacher absences and student absences, these are the type of things that we utilize when we're making decisions about needing to take some time off during the influenza season. So we're trying to utilize some of the decision-making processes that we already have in place, but in addition to that, factor in other information from the health department. Now, the number of positive cases, hospitalizations, ICU, patients in ICU, that information is all readily available on the Hamilton County Health Department website. So we'll be able to use that information to help us move between the phases. So let me give you an example. If we were in phase 3, we were starting to approach the 1,500 mark of active cases in Hamilton County. And we were seeing, though, that hospitalizations were on the rise. We were seeing our number of patients in ICU. Our absences for both teacher and students were starting to reach a point that it was abnormal. Then we would go ahead and transition into phase 2, into that reduced schedule, because what we're seeing is that not only in our schools, but also in the county, we're starting to see a rise of cases. We're also seeing other indicators that would tell us that the spread within the county is getting to the point that we should be thinking about transition to another phase. Once we get into phase 2, of course, that's a reduced days on campus. And part of our plan is that as we move between the phases, we'll do some just-in-time training with staff, student, and parents to let them know that we're getting ready to transition into another phase. And what does that mean for a student? What does that mean for a staff member? What does that mean from a parent standpoint?
Excellent. So this is kind of like, I guess, for those who used to go to the beach, you have your red flag and yellow flag, and according to what the conditions are at the time. So it is all determined, as that would be, by weather conditions, but this is determined as far as the phases and which one we're in by the health situation in the community at the time.
Well, Tim, one of the things that we thought about, Colonel Brooks and I discussed it, is when right after 9/11, not long after 9/11, they put a warning system available, the colors in place. So we used that kind of as a model. The beach example is a great example of being able to just give people a heads up about what's happening so that they can real quickly go to our website and make a determination of what phase we're in. But we also want to give them some indicators about which way we may be trending.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for explaining the phases to us. I think that helps us to better understand exactly what the phases are, how you came to these phases, and what they mean to us as a school district. And we appreciate it very much. And that's it for our program for today. We will have this available on YouTube, and you can come back and watch it at any time. Also, next week, coming up on Friday, we will have another program for you to help you understand how we will be reopening Hamilton County schools and doing it as safely as possible. That's coming up next Friday and each Friday between now and when school opens. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tim Hensley, Communications Officer for Hamilton County Schools.